How to find a buyer for commercial real estate properties. Do you have a commercial real estate property and you are looking for the ideal buyer? In this video, I'm going to talk about how to attract the right buyer for your commercial real estate property that you're selling. Selling commercial real estate is not like selling a residential property. So there's some nuances that I want to show in this video so that you get the highest price possible and you find a qualified buyer that you know will execute. That way you can accomplish your investing goals by selling that property. If you've had your commercial property listed and you're still not getting offers, I want to share some tips in this video that you can attract the right buyers. And by the end of the video, you'll know how to determine the qualifications of your buyer, expose it to the right buyer pools, and ultimately get the highest price and achieve your real estate goals. So step one. First, you got to know what type of buyer you're looking for. If you have a commercial real estate property, you want to think like the investor who's going to be buying it. Would it be geared to an owner user, someone that's going to actually operate their business, or is it going to be for an investment? And if it's an investment property, then we're going to look at, is the property stabilized? Is it a value add? Is it a core asset in a core market? This is going to affect how you're going to market this property to the right investor that's going to pay you the top price. Also, you're going to think about if there's land development or there's heavy value add, how can you provide as much information as possible to that buyer and make sure that that buyer is qualified for the actual project? A lot of people you'll find don't have the qualifications and they end up wasting your time. So we want to focus on if there's development, if there's investment, if there's value add, that you provide as much information as possible. This way, the buyer is knowledgeable and they'll know immediately if it fits their own criteria. Also, think about the location and the tenant mix. So what type of buyer would want to be in this specific location if you're located near a highway or a heavy trafficked visible road, or the tenant mix you already have? Is that attractive for this type of buyer? You want to think as the buyer so that you market it in a way that's going to be appealing and attractive so they pay the top price. So do you use a commercial broker or do you try to sell it on your own as a for sale by owner? Well, with commercial real estate, I highly recommend using a commercial broker that specializes in the category that you're selling. The brokerage firm would know exactly what needs to be shared to the buyer and how to qualify the buyer and find the best quality buyer so that they actually execute. The worst thing that can happen is the buyer ties up your property, puts you in contract for 6 months, doesn't execute on the sale, and at the last minute tries to retrade or renegotiate the price, lowering it. This is happening frequently in 2025 due to the economic recession. What you want to do is find the right broker that knows the asset class, has a pool of buyers already available, and someone that you align with their character and their values. It's clear that they have to create the marketing package, they have to do a thorough underwriting analysis, and then they have to do an outreach campaign, which is going to expose the asset to the available buyers that are out there. But you want to make sure that the package and the underwriting reflects what's truly going on with your property. So finding the right relationship with the right broker is critical. And some of the ways to do that is asking them questions. What are some of the current marketing packages you have on your properties? What are some of the previous sales that you've had over the last 3 to 6 months in the same category as mine? What are some of the hot buyers you have right now where they don't mention their names, but they are the archetype or the type of investment firm or owner user that would be interested in your type of property? And then are they diligent? Are they calling back? Are they following up? Are they responsive? Do they have a team? That's critical to understand if they're qualified to actually selling your property. So obviously, it's clear that putting the property on as many platforms online as possible will give you the best pool of buyers. Now, something to look out for are a lot of commercial brokers will not expose the property on all the websites. That's a mistake. They'll push back and say they have a buyer pool and they want to sell it off market. Typically, this is out of greed where they want to double in the commission, meaning they don't want to pay another broker a fee, or they don't want to deal with a lot of newer buyers in the market. They'd like to deal with their comfortable database that they've already worked with. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would only give them a fixed timeline to be able to market the property to their own network and not expose it online. 2 weeks, maybe a month. And if they can't sell the property at the premium price, I would highly suggest, and if you can push back even at the beginning of the negotiations, exposing the property to the largest amount of buyer pool possible, right? More competition creates more price. It creates more work for their team and for themselves to qualify the buyers, but that's what you're paying them to do. So here are some of the websites that we can go over that you must have your commercial property on to find the right buyer. LoopNet.com. If you're in commercial real estate, you already know of this, but this is the best known commercial listing platform. It has the most properties out there that people are going to be looking at for sale or for lease. Your property must be on LoopNet. Crexi. It's great for investor visibility, analytics. It gives you a lot of great data. We use Crexi quite often at my firm, Patriot Holdings, to research properties. I highly suggest putting it on their platform, and they do have an auction platform as well that you can utilize. 10X is a great platform. It's an auction platform for faster dispositions or distressed sales. You can also have a stabilized property that would help in that, but it is an auction platform and there's a minimum reserve, so talk to their team before you look at listing it on there. And then the local MLS. If you have a property that's for an owner-user or even a small investment property, the regional MLSs have a commercial platform that it's helpful to expose it to all the regional players. I would suggest pushing the broker to put that property on that type of platform to get the most amount of exposure. The broker's internal deal channel or deal rooms. So companies like Marcus & Millichap, Colliers, all the large brokers have these deal rooms and prospect lists that they expose these deals to by blasting them out. They're going to do that automatically, but that's one of the reasons to use a reputable broker with a large network, because they're going to have the highest qualified buyers and they're very organized around that data room, providing the information for a buyer that they're going to need in order to make an offer. Obviously, you want to tap into your own network, but I have noticed that social media has been a powerful tool to help get exposure for your property. Posting it on LinkedIn, and if you have connections around the industry or around the types of properties that you own, that is going to give more visibility to potential buyers. Property management companies in the area, they know buyers that are available for these types of properties, and they're a great tool to help get exposure. And they also want the property management contract. So they're motivated to share your listing or your property details with potential buyers. 1031 exchange buyers. These are the best for investment properties because they're motivated. They need to buy. So there are 1031 investment groups on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I highly suggest putting the property on there and having your broker target their 1031 exchange and buyer pool. If you have land or a redevelopment property, local developers and contractors are very useful to find a buyer. Getting a broker that understands who are the local developers and contractors and then reaching out and sharing the property with them is a great strategy to get those sold. Commercial meetup groups. Some markets in the U.S. have large RIA groups, real estate investment clubs, and there's obviously many masterminds around commercial real estate investing, many podcasts around it. So you want to find the groups that are looking to buy these types of properties. It builds the buyer pool. It's not the best option, but I have sold properties to my network within different buyer pools of organizations that revolve around commercial real estate investing. And then lastly, I'm sure you've probably gotten calls before for buyers looking to acquire your property. Start making a list if you haven't already. Call those potential buyers and ask them, what have you purchased in the area recently? How many assets do you own? How many people are on your team, or do you manage the property yourself? Why are you interested in my property, and what is important about buying a property right now? These questions are going to help you understand, are they just looking around and casually trying to invest in a bargain basement priced property, or do they have real motivation? Are they a player, and are they interested or motivated in actually buying real estate in the timeline that you're looking to sell? Lastly, the package is very important when you put the property on the market. This is common sense, but in the industry and real estate, you're buying commercial property for income or for the numbers. So you're going to look at the rent roll. You want to be sure to have that clean rent roll available to the buyer. The profit and loss statement, at least the trailing 12, the last 12 months of activity showing income and expenses month by month. The buyer's really going to want to see that the property is trending in a positive direction. Any site plans, any zoning letters, or any environmental reports. These are all important for the buyer to know that they can do their diligence quickly and there's no landmines that they'd be walking into. And be sure to push your broker to get great drone shots. They're very inexpensive nowadays. Good property photos. You want to be clear that this is the property boundary line. So on the drone footage, have them outline the parcel and shade it or highlight it, and have them shade other good services or properties or important landmarks in the area, such as hospitals, schools, even highways. This is going to help a buyer immediately understand this is where the property is located and why it's a favorable location. The whole goal is that you want to give the buyer everything that they need to analyze the property in less than 10 minutes. And the more attractive it is, the higher the price is. So if you're preparing to sell your property, do the final rent increase. Be sure to try to extend the lease if it's going to be an investment property and you have a tenant. Long-term leases sell properties at the highest price. You may want to do some of the final capital expenditures where you dress up the landscaping, fix some of the paving, make sure the buildings look painted or fresh, make sure you get a roof inspection. These are all things the buyer's going to want, and that's going to give you the highest price. And then lastly, when selling, it always comes down to price, terms, timeline, and motivation. PTTM. So if you're going to get the highest price, then you may need to be flexible on the timeline. If it's a 1031 buyer, then you may need to give them a little more time to close. If it's a buyer that needs financing, right now banks are slow to fund commercial loans. You're going to give them a little more time, but you're doing that because you're getting the premium price or the price that you were desiring. Next is timeline. Obviously, if they're closing quick, 30 days, 45 days with minimal due diligence, in terms of my portfolio, I would look at discounting the price because of the ease of the transaction. So if liquidity and cash is important to you and you want a quick timeline, you may want to adjust the price. Terms are, do you need all cash up front? Or are you willing to do an installment sale? Or is that even more advantageous for you where you take payments over time and not have to pay the large capital gains tax up front? If you offer terms, then buyers may pay a higher price because owner financing terms are much easier to work with rather than banks. Also, if you're looking to use the property for a series of months or years after the closing, that can be a term that you negotiate in the contract, and it can help facilitate what price the buyer's looking to buy at. Because if you're going to be a renter as your business is occupying the location, then the buyer knows they have a stream of income and they're going to pay a premium price. So when you're dealing with a motivated buyer, you want to look at how do I make it a win-win situation, being flexible so that I can meet my needs and yet they can still meet theirs. So now that you know how to find a good commercial buyer for your property, we're going to focus on 1031 exchanges. So what do you do after you sell? Well, in this next video, I'm going to break down the best 1031 exchange investment opportunities, what the tax repercussions are if you don't 1031, and what are all the rules that you're going to need to understand to make sure that you do one properly.